In this riveting video, I will tell you a story that will leave you in shock. An adulterous wife who spits on absolutely everything: her husband, her family, her promises. Get ready for startling details, unexplained actions, and unpredictable consequences. Enter a world of incredible tales of cheating wives and dramatic events that ruin lives. To say that this year has been a bad one for Boris is an understatement. The problems began back in February when he was let go from his job. The director of the museum never liked the modest young man. He seemed to know history well, was clever and well-read, but lacked initiative. He didn't have the same charisma, and she had to make room for her son, who was supposed to graduate by summer and start working. All in all, everything was leading to his dismissal, and Boris could feel it. He still remembers that cloudy day at work when he heard from his boss, "I think it's time for us to part ways. Start looking for something else." Boris walked home in his washed-out cheap jacket, wondering where he would go now, how long it would take him to find a new job, and how he would live on his mother's disability pension alone. He realized that in this small city, it would be difficult for a historian like him to find a good job. But then a cute girl from next door came into his life. They had met on New Year's Eve, and Boris's mother also knew her and liked her very much when she came to visit. Always smiling and positive, she would bring a pie or show off her new clothes. Mom really wanted Vera and Boris to have a closer relationship, and so they did. Every night, they played chess, watched movies, or just chatted. All day long, Boris hesitated to kiss her like a schoolboy, but then a miracle happened. He was overjoyed and was already thinking about asking Vera to live with them, so his mother wouldn't be bored, and he could help with the housework. Except that Vera didn't work, and it seemed like she had no intention of doing so. She had finished college and was sitting at home, but Boris believed that he couldn't find a better girl, so he had to take her. Mom was a little hesitant about the idea of Vera moving out. "Boris, you should take your time. You need to get to know each other better. We've only known each other for 2 months. What kind of life is that?" "Mom, I'm 25 years old. I need to start a serious relationship. Everyone is laughing at me for living with you. I don't want to lose such a great girl. Remember what happened with Nastia?" "Oh, Sonny, look for yourself, of course, but now you also have a bad job. What to live on? It's all right. It's just temporary difficulties. We'll get through it. As soon as I find a job, Vera will move in with us." "All right," said my mother, realizing that Boris had long since made up his own mind. He was a man after all. The young man had to get a job in a jewelry shop. There was nothing else suitable. They paid a penny, but the owner promised to pay a percentage of the profits over time if the number of customers increased. Boris quickly learned the basics of repair work, and he and his partner began to divide the order by halves. The guy liked his work, no nerves, quiet, unhurried. Bosses came only in the evening, but otherwise they were left to their own devices. Only customers came by one, and that was all. Boris's eyes, of course, got terribly tired during the day, but he had to get used to it. He invited Vera to live with him, just as he had planned. The girl was very surprised at the proposal, but did not refuse, promised to think about it, and the next day, during a walk, said that she agreed. A bright streak began briefly in Boris's life. His work suited him. He and his partner were friends. The guy had a lot to learn from him. At home, peace and order. Boris came home every day from work to the laid table, everything tasty and fresh, cooked by his mother and his beloved Veroshka. He told them about his clients, and they listened attentively, laughing, joking. Then Boris would go to his and Vera's room to rest, and his girlfriend would clean the kitchen. Well, and then the evening, as usual, walks, chess, movies, talking until midnight. Boris admired Vera and realized that he loved her more and more every day, that he was ready to do a lot for her. She looked back at him with her beautiful green eyes and smiled, simply because she could not live without a smile. A very positive and bright girl. What a wonderful girl she is. What does she see in me anyway? Lucky fool, thought Boris to himself. He really thought meeting her was a huge success. Boris came up with the idea of taking his grandmother's old ring, lying in his mother's casket, and melting it down for Vera. To inscribe something like, "I love you," and then present this ring to her with a marriage proposal. It was a problem for Boris to find time to execute this idea. There were lots of orders in their workshop, but he tried very hard. He decided that he would stay an hour every day. It didn't seem too time-consuming, but something could be done. Mother and Vera got along well together. The girl's easygoing nature made it easy for her to take care of everything. She helped out around the house and spent time on the internet, entertaining her future mother-in-law and visiting her friends every day. Vera wasn't concerned about not having a job, but she did feel like she was relying on her boyfriend, who wasn't even her husband yet. She knew that without her, their apartment would be gloomy and dull. Boris was in the process of making a ring for his beloved and was starting to think more and more about having children. Usually it's girls who rush into these things, but here he was, not even married to Vera yet, already imagining having a baby boy with her, whom he would name after his grandfather, George. Boris had no idea that some big news was coming his way very soon. He didn't know that Vera's parents were not happy about her new life. She had told him that her parents were fine with her moving, but that was far from the truth. Especially when her ex-boyfriend, the handsome Dima, returned from the army. Dima and Vera had gone to college together and dated, but eventually broke up. He moved to another city and then was drafted into the army. Only their parents believed that they were meant to be together. Dima himself never forgot about Vera during his service. He wanted to write to her while he was away, but he never did. When he returned home, he went to visit her. He was surprised to hear that she had moved, but Vera's parents reassured him. They told him that she had moved in with some loser, but it wouldn't last long, probably despite him. And Dima was reassured. He assumed that after a few visits to Vera's new apartment, she would give in and come back to him. Of course, Dima had an advantage over Boris in every way. He was handsome, not poor, ambitious, and confident. He had served his time in the army and immediately enrolled in correspondence courses to get his high school diploma. His father even bought him a car, something that Boris could only dream of. And Dima had the added advantage of knowing that Vera had once loved him very much. She had never felt such strong feelings for anyone else before. So there was a chance for Dima to win her back. When Vera saw Dima for the first time after he returned, she didn't even flinch. It was as if she had moved on with her life. But her parents purposely left them alone together the second time he visited. "Vera, you're still the same," Dima said. "Maybe you've had enough of this nonsense. Let's start over. Dima, you couldn't decide what was more important to you. Your friends or me. You wanted to go away somewhere. Well, that's when I realized everything. I never forgot about you for a minute. Remember how many great moments we had?" Dima walked over to Vera, put his arm around her shoulders, and stroked her hair. He smelled like expensive perfume. And Boris, usually something fried. Suddenly she thought, "No, Dima, I do not understand why you say all this. Find yourself another girl and be happy with her." "So I can't, since I'm here," whispered Dima. "I love you. I just love you." Vera felt uncomfortable. He kept stroking her head. He didn't care at all that she lived with someone else. He was confident in his power. A thought flashed through Vera's mind. She went home to Boris and his mother. Everything was mixed up in her mind. Dima was better at everything. And he had come for her. With Boris, she would have nothing. The girl had changed since Dima appeared on the horizon. She had been talkative before, but now she was lost in thought. Her old feelings for Dima were awakened in Vera. Or maybe it was just a desire for profit. Boris noticed this, but did not pay attention. The young man hurried home. He decided to propose to her today. He splurged on a beautiful bouquet of tulips, and in his pocket was the very ring with an engraving. On the way, he bought a small cake and a bottle of celebratory. It was just for him and Vera, and his mother would have tea too. Vera had been walking around serious all day, and she did not greet Boris in a very friendly way. She wasn't happy about the flowers, but that didn't bother the guy. His mother, on the other hand, was very cheerful, and he attributed Vera's bad mood to the weather. It had been overcast and damp all day, and she wanted it to be summer already. They drank tea, and Boris called Vera to follow him into their room. She sat down next to him with a displeased look. "Vera, my kitten, I'm worried. In short, I want you to marry me." Paled. He took her hand and put on a simple ring with the inscription, Elu Vera. The girl was embarrassed. A month ago, she would have smiled, kissed him, and promised to think about it. Now she wanted nothing at all. Boris, against the backdrop of Dima's return, seemed so pathetic to her. But after all, pity was not the best feeling for a man. Boris, without waiting for an answer, began to passionately kiss Vera, but she pushed him away. "What is it, Vera?" He was surprised. "Nothing. You're in a hurry. We don't know each other very well yet." Boris grinned. "It's okay that we live together and no one's telling us to get married tomorrow. We could have a wedding in the fall. There's no money right now anyway. I just really wanted to confess to you and give you this gift." Vera looked at the ring and felt nauseous. From everything. From herself. No, she did not love Boris and moved for the sake of the ba. The girl returned to the kitchen and drank water. Boris put the bottle aside and followed her. He realized that Vera was not at all happy about his proposal and did not want to marry him. "Vera, I'm not pressuring you. Let's live like we used to. What are you afraid of? We'll get married in a year. What's the rush? We're young. There's plenty of time. The main thing is that I love you." He pulled her to him, but she pushed him away again and ran back into the other room. Boris sat down in a chair and wondered what was wrong. 10 minutes later, a crying Vera appeared with a bag. "I am going out. Forgive me, please. I want nothing more. Goodbye." She put the ring in front of him and left. Her mother looked out of her room, stunned by what had happened. No one really understood what it was. Vera, wiping away her tears, ran up the stairs of her apartment building. She was confused and she needed to figure it all out. And maybe Dima was her man. But not Boris. And Boris poured himself a drink. His mother looked at him and cried. "Boris, what is it? What happened between you two?" "Nothing. Nothing happened between us. I guess she's bored." "What do you mean, bored? What are you talking about?" "Yes, I am, Mom." He quickly disposed of the bottle and went to his room. He fell down on the bed and lay there until nightfall. At night, he tried to text her on Messenger, but was blocked. Yeah, that's Vera, he thought. Boris could not calm down for a long time. He kept waiting to meet her, but Vera vanished into thin air. It turned out that she had gone to her relatives, along with Dima. Boris had been grieving for her all summer. It was especially bitter to think of Vera in silence while he was working. The pain only began to subside with time. A very difficult year, he thought. Well, let me put it this way. If Boris doesn't change anything in his head and the man is already 25, he is a real man. He will have a very hard life, not just for a year. Isn't it? I think you agree. If not, we can discuss, but if you think about it that way, he's absolutely wrong. Yet that's his phrase. Yeah, that's Verechka. Man, yeah, that's Berechka. Because you decided that the girl you like to bring home. Well, I understand everyone's situation is different, but we live in a time when a man who strives for a goal, the goal of making money, because it's the main thing now, yes, he can get a job. It's okay. So what if you have a degree in history? I mean, it's somehow strange. First, he says that he will not find a job in his specialty. Then he goes and gets a job in a jewelry shop. As if he couldn't go for some salesman or consultant and build a career in sales. You can make money there. It's a well-known fact. But Boris decided to live with his mother and tell Vera what a smart girl she is, that he loves her. Yes, of course, the step with the melted ring of his late grandmother who is now deceased, I apologize if I'm wrong. It's certainly beautiful, it's very nice, but in the context of the whole situation, it's surrealism that I drew in my head, imagining their way of life. God, a young girl, cheerful, bright. She needs something else, she needs a man, which apparently is what Dima was. And it's not just about money. The money is only an indicator of some status, and probably rather no security. And with Boris, well, who would feel safe, right? And now on to the second story. After sticking up for my neighbor, I decided to check to see why my wife went to his place so often for salt. When I opened the door, I heard a short but unpleasant conversation that turned my life upside down. Get ready for an amazing story of cheating and dramatic twists of fate. I am 42, my wife is 40. My son is 18 in military school, was in school at the time of the events, now graduated, ranked and serving. We have been living together for 20 years. You cannot believe it, but we argued and quarreled only at the very beginning of family life. And then, as if we rubbed up against each other, we began to understand each other, and there was respect in the family. And of course, trust. There is nothing without it. About 6 months ago, I began to notice that my wife became more active in bed. I am certainly pleased with this, but also alarmed. And one night in bed, my wife suggested that I try something to which she had previously been extremely negative, which surprised me very much. Naturally, I decided to ask her why she suddenly decided to change her standards and rules, to which she replied that time was passing, and she wanted to try. The weekend was coming up, and it was going to be my friend's birthday. Naturally, he invited my wife and me. For some reason, my wife was not too happy about it. The proposal was a happy occasion, and on that day, we started cleaning and cooking in the morning. I couldn't refuse and wore a beautiful dress with stockings, which surprised me since my wife rarely wears them. As the time approached, we called a cab and my wife put on makeup and dressed, looking absolutely stunning. I was excited to show her off to our friends and acquaintances. The car arrived and my wife hiccuped before running into the kitchen. It turns out she had forgotten to turn off the borscht, so she was stuck in the kitchen. I had already called her and told her to wait for the cab. She came out smiling, and we left the apartment. After driving only 300 meters, my wife suddenly remembered that she had not turned off the borscht and wanted to quickly run back home to do so. She told me to go ahead and she would catch up with me. We stopped the car and she got out. At first, I agreed to her plan, but then I thought about it and realized I didn't want to wait. I wanted to arrive with my wife so everyone could see how beautiful she looked. I told the cab driver to turn back and pick up my wife. He said it would cost an extra 100, but I agreed. We reached the first intersection and turned back towards our house. I quickly ran up to the 3rd floor, opened the door and called my wife, but there was no answer. I noticed her clothes and purse thrown on the bed in the open bedroom door. I thought she might be in the bathroom, but she wasn't there either. I called her phone and heard it ringing from her purse. I realized that she wasn't home and started to worry. I went to the kitchen just in case and saw that the borscht was still on the stove, but the gas was turned off. I waited for 5, 10, 20 minutes, and the cab driver started calling me. I decided to go and let him go. As I was going down to the 2nd floor, I felt like I was in a movie or a book. The door of one of the apartments opened, and my wife came out, accompanied by a young neighbor who was 27 years old and married. There was a brief moment of silence before my wife explained that she had gone to get salt. I asked her why she had gone when we had just been to the store 2 days ago and she had bought salt. I also asked her where the salt was that she had gone to get. My wife began to say something about the thyroid and Ayurvedic salt, but I was not listening. I went downstairs, got in a cab, and drove to a friend's house for his birthday. I told my friend that my wife was sick and could not come, even though she really wanted to. My wife kept calling me all night, but I didn't answer, and she probably didn't dare to come. After my birthday party, I went to a hotel, turned off my phone, and slept until the next afternoon. In the evening, I returned home. My wife greeted me with extreme concern and tried to kiss me, but I pulled away. Why did my wife express extreme bewilderment? She even had the nerve to ask me questions like, "What happened? Why didn't I pick up the phone? Where have I been missing for almost 24 hours? And so on. I wanted to have a heart-to-heart talk with her. I asked her to tell me everything honestly. I'm not a 16-year-old boy who can be fooled. My wife refused to do anything and even proudly gave me her phone to make sure there were no unauthorized numbers in it. Well, I said I will not look into your phone. I would rather go to a neighbor for salt. Here, my wife became hysterical, but even at that moment, she did not confess to anything. And when I went to the door, she stood in my way and said that I could only go through her pipes. I just took my wife by the shoulders, lifted her off the floor, and moved her to another place. She was crying and literally fighting, not wanting to let me go. I still managed to leave the apartment. There was no conversation with the neighbor. I just asked if they had been together for a long time. I said that if he didn't answer, I would tell his wife. And they have 2 children, with the youngest only a couple of months old. It turned out to be almost 6 months. I wasn't interested in the rest. I was very hurt, bitter, and terribly angry. I wanted to make a scene, to yell and scream at my wife. And of course, I wanted details because my wife was not suddenly interested, and not just interested in other kinds of lovemaking. I'm sure she first tried it with her lover, this young father of 2. How I restrained myself and didn't cause a scene, I don't even know. Probably because my wife was quiet. First, she sat in the bathroom, then in the kitchen, and then lay down in the bedroom and did not move. I think if she had said a word at that point, I would have exploded and said a lot of hurtful and unnecessary things to my wife. Naturally, we went to bed separately. We divorced with the reason stated as not being compatible in character. My wife went to live with my cousin, and the apartment was my inheritance and was not subject to division. Dear listeners, if you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. You can do so directly under this clip. To ensure you don't miss any future videos, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. You can also click on the bell to receive notifications about new videos. Thank you and see you soon.